Also, another logistical thing. Many students are emailing, not many, unfortunately, but some students are emailing me with some exceptions or things like, can I delay the homework, or can I do these? Not very many so far. But I want to do one thing that will be homogeneous for the class so that everybody knows it. My email is full of different type of messages, and I don't want when it comes to the end of the class to lose track of things. So I will essentially post a form in which you can submit your email address. I mean, your ucc.edu identity will be captured, and then you can add any comments that I should take care of while grading. For example, as I emailed you, Professor, I was sick in homework 1, or I broke my arm, or whatever happened. These are just examples, so that I don't lose track when it comes to the end of the class of what went on, and how I should, all the particular situations that students have. Okay, so I reply to emails telling you, yes, you can do that, or no, you cannot do that. But then, please enter the situation in the spreadsheet so that when the end of class comes, I don't lose track of things. Okay, the spreadsheet will be alive later today. Any other general question regarding the class? Any doubts? Any? Okay, very good. So, so let me play some more with the application. So last time, oh yeah, we have the clickers, so I can take polls more easily. So last time during class, we did this way of getting the location. Okay. Okay, that's the app I forgot to open again. iClicker. So I just want to ask now on the fly, without bothering to make an official spreadsheet poll. But how many of you? Okay, no, I do that. I need an official spreadsheet poll, unfortunately, because otherwise I cannot ask the question, I guess. The beauty. Everything is simple, but everything is complicated. Okay. Okay, so, well, I guess this is actually wrong. Okay, I'm curious how many of you tried to play with getting the location out of your mobile device, essentially. Just to have an impression of how quickly you try once I tell you how to do something. So let's take this poll and let's see how many people reply, just to have an idea. Essentially, I want to know whether I need to say anything more about acquiring the location. I gave you the code. I talked about the code last time, and in the skeleton code, if you refresh the skeleton code, you will see a little bit more. You will see the place where I register the listener, and where I unregister the listener at the end. So you should have a little bit more information about how to do that, okay? So, and I'm just curious, essentially, let's leave it open for 20 more seconds or 30 more seconds, or yeah, 95, it seems to have plateaued. 97, okay. 1 minute and 20 seconds will be the magic number. I don't know why. Okay. Okay, good number of votes. Okay. Okay, so there seems to be half of the people want to go over it again a little bit. So I will do a quick summary, okay? But not as long as last time, obviously. And then you can ask me questions if you want more details. So let me remind you what are the basic portions of these, okay? The basic idea is this. So first of all, in the manifest, I'm not sure I mentioned it last time, but in the manifest at the beginning, there is a section in which you list the permissions that you want to use, okay? The way you can know that you have to add, there are two ways you may know that you have to add permissions. Oh, sorry, what are these things? These ones? Yeah. So there are two ways in which you know. If you read the documentation, you are told, okay? If you forget, the program will crash, and you will not know why, okay? And if you look at the program, actually, maybe I can really make it crash. Well, okay, I'll make it crash later. But if I remove the permission, the program will crash. And if you have a filter that only catches the crashes in your application, I think you will not see anything, okay? Because a crash is not really generated in your application. It's generated essentially in the Android framework. So you need to disable the filters, look at what went on in the log, and you will see in the log that it will actually suggest you the permission you are missing, okay? So in some sense, after you know what to look for, it's quite easy to find what you need, okay? So you need to add these permissions if you want to use location. And in the main activity, the location is accessed in this way. Of course, you can also access location in Android from background processes, or when you are not in front of the user. So even if you are after the on pause, but using the location requires battery. So if you want to, one of the various ways to ensure that you don't drain too much battery is to make sure that when you execute on pause, you stop acquiring the location. Okay. So what I do is this: I attach the location listener to the location generator in on resume, and I detach it in on pause. The lines are these essentially. Sorry, I'm spinning around. In on resume, I do these. I get the location manager. I mean, there are these three lines that are essentially boilerplate after a while. You know, they look almost always the same. You get the location manager, and then you request location updates in which you say from which provider, and you say which location listener should be called, okay? You can attach these to various location providers. I have to tell you that this is sort of the simplified way to do it, okay? They invented, because you know my motto, that in Java there is, and in Android there is always one more layer in the direction if you like it. So they invented another way in which you can do this, okay? So you can specify, for example, hey, I wish in theory I had semi-precise location, whatever that means, okay? And then Android automatically decides to give you either GPS or network location, depending on a bunch of stuff that I don't really understand, because it's not really explained, actually. They want to decide what's best for them. But for example, presumably, according to, you know, how charged the battery is or how charged that is, you know, they decide which provider is actually best for you because they know better, okay? And so you can read about these. I added the pointers to the documentation about the previous class. Okay, I'm personally one of these people that, if I understand better what's going on, I think I can optimize it myself. And so, sometimes I prefer the simpler way to say, hey, I want a network, or I want GPS, or I want both, or I want whatever, no? And I prefer to know it myself. I prefer sometimes to be a little bit at a lower level, I guess, no? Because, I mean, I will need at some point to know the accuracy and make some assumptions about what happens in my code. And so I just prefer to know a little bit more. But there is this more high-level fashion of getting the location that you can read about in the documentation. Here, instead, I just say, I really want it from the network and GPS providers. No questions asked, okay? No doubts. So this location listener is made always in the same way. Oh, sorry, no, first I'll tell you the corresponding part. Here is where you register it, and where you unregister it is here. Notice that here, when you unregister it, there is this funny thing. For me, it's a bit asymmetrical, but you simply say location manager, remove updates of the location listener. And this actually removes it from both providers. It's a bit weird. It's not so nice, in my opinion, but that's what happens. Yeah.
What's the difference between a location listener and a location manager?
The location manager is the Android internal thing that manages the location providers. Imagine your Android operating system. I'm inventing because I don't know what happens inside, but I'm imagining that when you boot the Android, this thing boots up and says, hey, which GPS chip do I have? Hey, what other thing do I have? Oh, okay, fine, And then it knows internally that it has these various ways internally to get the location. And that's the location manager. Okay, so it's like an OS handler, which you can ask questions. And the OS Android has many of these managers for many things. There is also an account manager, and there is also yet a manager.
So if I wanted to write a simple app that would, tell me my geological coordinates, that's where I get the data.
Yeah.
The location manager is where I get the data from.
Well, yes, but you have to attach a location data to tell it that please, I want to use this location listener to listen to the location. Okay. I mean, I can be the location manager. You have to tell me, hey, you want to listen from me from the location. Okay? And I have to say, okay, fine, where should I send you the language? And that's the location listener.
So, wait a second. The location listener.
Yes.
What the location listener is?
So, suppose that you want to know your location. Okay? I tell you, great. When I take, where should I say? That address is the location listener. It's because I get the location many times. Every second, every 2 seconds, every 10 seconds. It depends.
The location listener is the thing that holds the actual data.
No, it's the place that is called every time I get a location. I'm the location manager. When I receive a location, I need to give it to you. Where should I give it?
The location listener.
That's right. Okay. So, yeah.
So it's kind of like the location listener is the mailbag, I have to go to you.
Exactly. So he said it's like the mailing address which you send the location. It's precisely that. Except it's a mailing address with 4 PO boxes, essentially. No, the PO boxes are these things. So the location manager, this is our location. Sorry, this location listener has 4 post office boxes, which are these methods that if you like, you can override. And there is on location changed. This is where the location is actually sent. Then there is on status changed, which means, if the provider became enabled or disabled, etc. You can read the documentation of all these methods. Well, okay, here is not very, very big, this documentation, but you can read it in the description. One moment only, okay? On provider enabled and on provider disabled. So I don't know what on status changed does, okay? I don't know. I think I would look it up if I needed. But essentially, if you want to be alerted to changes in the way the location will be delivered to you, you can attach your code there. A typical case is this. You know that there are many apps that when you switch off the GPS, either because, if you switch off the GPS, the app will be notified, and then the app tells you, I'm sorry, but if you switch off the GPS, I cannot guide you anymore. Okay? That's because the app has a listener to one of those methods, for the provider disabled or whatever. Okay? Yeah, there was a question.
Oh, so where exactly is it returning the location data in this function?
It's here. Okay, this is location, location. This is the location you get. And location is an object that has a lot of fields, okay? Let me try to do one as an example. Like double something is equal to location dot, you know, these are all the things I can get. Bearing to, so this is where you are going. This is the distance to, and you can say how distant you are from another location. So if you have two locations, Android can use, you know, the ellipsoid model of the Earth. I don't know whether it just uses a sphere or a more accurate model, and it can essentially tell you the distance between these 2 points. Get accuracy. So this is what I'm using, you know, to show you the accuracy. This is in meters from the GPS of the network. Altitude, bearing. Bearing is the direction in which you are going. Okay. Elapsed time nanos. I have no idea what it is. Latitude and longitude, speed, time, and then get provider, and then you can ask whether things are available, and you can remove stuff, you can set stuff, etc. But the get methods are the main ones. Okay, so there is a lot of information. Now, the fact that there is a lot of information in theory may not mean that there is a lot of information in practice, right? I think if you switched on the GPS too recently, may not have good speed data, for instance. Notice that there is no accuracy for the speed. So you don't know the approximation of the speed, okay? You don't know the accuracy of the speed you get. And, you know, essentially, using location is in a sophisticated way is difficult. But using it in a simple way is very easy. You can check that you have latitude, longitude, and accuracy, and you're basically done.
How do you, there's certain apps that are on the market that let you set the, that let you actually set the phone's location to whatever arbitrary point in the world that you want to convince another program that you are.
I don't know how they do it.
You don't know? You don't know?
I will have to research that.
Generally speaking, you're not supposed to do that. They don't give you they don't give you
I don't know that you can not do it on a non-routed phone, but I may be wrong. Because it would seem to me a security threat that, you know, if you ask from the location from the actual, you know, Google APIs, that they can tell you are somewhere else. I mean, I can give you then an app that lets you, this verifies your Facebook photos, but I need access to your location. And then I can click you to video, and I can guide you to set profile in the middle of the day without water and you there. You know? I mean, it would be very nice as a way to kill somebody. Yeah, twisted mind of a professor. Maybe there are easier ways, though. Okay, so okay, so this is sort of the summary for the location, and the only thing I'm doing here is this. If you ask a location for many providers, actually even from a single provider, the problem is that the accuracy can vary widely depending on how good your reception is and what you have in your reception. And so it's generally not an incredibly smart thing to just listen blindly to the last location you get. Here I do something that is an epsilon more sophisticated. So I remember the accuracy of the previous fix, and if the new fix is lousier than that by some amount, then I don't bother about it. Okay, so I have that is better Boolean that I try to set according to whether I should or should not listen to the new estimate. And I had this joke about, you know, that I listen to the new estimate if its accuracy is smaller than the previous accuracy plus the number of seconds, because I assume that your location can drift 1 meter a second, the average speed of a student in class. No, that was a joke. Okay. Yeah.
Let's say you want your users to be able to switch between like meters and feet.
Yeah.
You just create a second location listener.
No. So my own choice these type of things is this, and I think it matches what I told you during my web class. Okay. Internally, just stick to one set of units. Okay. I would stick to meters because that's what you receive from the location manager. Okay. But just meters, UTC time, and you know, whatever we are given, variances or the unit, and then do all the conversion in the output. It's so much easier. Okay. And in fact, so suppose we wanted to enable these, okay, I will use it as an example of a UI to build today, actually. It's a really good example. So let me do that for you as well, okay? Okay, other questions on the location. So you have the sample code. I think you should be able to use it, okay? Okay, let me move on then. The other thing that I want to do in this check-in app is this. So we will have a lot of occasions during the class to talk about authentication. Sorry, I'm going around trying to find the piece of code that I need. Oh boy, I don't find it.
By the way, are there tools that you search for your code in the Android Studio?
Sorry, one moment only. I think it's here actually. Okay, so say it again. Are there tools?
They'll let you search for document.
Yeah, there are tools, but if I don't remember what I am searching for, it's a sort of a problem, as you understand. This is what I wanted. I mean, you know. Anyway, so okay, no. The other problem is the following. I want you to be able to choose your account. Okay, so there is always a problem. If you have a user, how do you authenticate that user? And normally this may be a difficult problem, right? Because you would need them to log in or log out or do various things. Later in the class, I will show you how, if you have any website that you might already have, you can display the login page from that website, or the user can log in there, and then you can, get back the credentials and do whatever you want. Fine. So there are a lot of ways, that you can implement, or author, you can implement a lot of things. But what's probably the simplest possible way? The simplest possible way is that when you have an Android phone, you typically put on it some Google accounts. No, usually everybody has at least one because you need it to use the Play Store and install apps. So there is at least one account, and there may be more. And the beautiful thing of those accounts is that those accounts are validated. Meaning, you know that if I have look at ucsc.edu, I cannot have put it on my phone without at some point logging in into Google with that account. Okay, so that means, I mean, the account has to be valid for me to have that. So yeah, you can essentially trust that the owner of the phone is the person, or I mean, I can lend the phone to somebody else, but modulo that, which is always possible, you can trust these Google accounts. So the simple question is then, how can I get these Google account names? Okay, fine, and it's pretty easy because again, just as there is a location manager, there is an account manager. So this piece of code that actually comes from Stack Overflow, this is an example of how to acknowledge when you find external code and you use it in your app. No, you just save from where you got it. Works in this way. I build an array list of string of emails. Array list in Java is the typical way in which you have a list that you can access. I wanted element number I, or you want to append stuff at the end. Array lists have this very convenient data structure. Like they're almost like the arrays of Python in many ways. No, so I build these. I have this list of emails, and I want to fill it up with your emails on the device. Then I have an email pattern so that describes what's an email address. So what do I expect an email address to look like? This is because I don't fully know, because I tried to avoid investigating, but I tried to avoid knowing the full type of accounts that you can have on an Android phone. I think you can also add Microsoft Exchange accounts or other types of accounts, or Facebook accounts, or accounts that do not necessarily come with an email address as the identifier. Okay, so there are various types of accounts. And so what I'm doing here is that I'm saying, this is how an email looks like. And I define this pattern's email address. I mean, it's actually defined in Android, so I don't need to bother with it. Then I ask the account manager for the list of accounts. Each account is an account data structure. You can read the documentation on it if you like. I'm wondering whether it will pop out or not. No, it's not wanting to pop out today. Oh, yes. Okay, so you see that, okay, there is not a lot of information here, actually. But there is, if you go online, there is An account object has a lot of fields, exactly. And so I do the following. If an email pattern matcher the account name matches an email, then I get a string possible email as the account name, and I add it to the emails. So essentially, I'm building the list of all your possible account names given as emails. Okay, not very sophisticated, and I return that. So this is just a simple example, you know, for you to realize how to use the Accounts API. The Accounts API is fairly broad. You can do many things with it. You can get many information about the user. If you use it, of course, since you're getting private information out of the user, you need to add to the manifest this get accounts permission, because otherwise your app will not let you look at that. The problem of that permission, of course, you have it in the code that I share with you, is that, I mean, the problem in general with Android permissions is that they're all or nothing. So if I ask you for permission, it's like this app that I actually like otherwise, OpenTable, to make restaurant reservations, right? I like the app, but I don't know why I should have access to my photos, okay? And I'm really tempted to buy an Android, what is his name? This Android One? No, what is Droid One? Which are these ones that run a cyanogen mode, the open source distribution, and then you can essentially deny permissions one by one to the apps. I think it's a much superior model, okay? But in Android, unfortunately, you have to either get the app and accept it or not. I think, you know, there are some checks in the background done to the safety of apps. So I think that if you try to do, I mean, I have believed that Google is running the apps you put on the App Store in some virtual machine to try to see if you're doing things that are malicious, okay? But I don't know, of course, they don't say what they do, so I don't know how to do the security itself. There was a question.
Oh, I was just wondering where the data is exactly that you're accessing, these email addresses that you're trying to get at.
Yeah, it's in the OS. When you open your phone and you go to accounts, you can see the list of your accounts, and that's what it's using.
Details are not very concerned.
No, I mean, but that's always the case in Android. Yeah, yeah. And there is worse than that. Now, you remind me at some point to talk about disappearing views, and that will be, you know, what's worse. So, okay, fine. Now you get the accounts, and this is not really the focus of what I wanted to talk about. So, I mean, it's an example. But the part is this now, that I want to define. Sorry, I can show you where I go. But in the layout, activity main, okay. Yeah, I need to switch to 21 because somehow reason I built only for 21. Okay, so I have a spinner. Okay, a spinner is one of these elements that, you know, you can choose between many things. So you have seen it on plenty of websites. You touch it, it gives you the list, then you can touch your choice, and you have chosen it. Okay, so it's very simple conceptually. It's a really so it's very simple also in code, right? What I did, I mean, in the layout. In the layout, I defined the spinner, and if you go look at the code behind the spinner, it's just the default. I don't think I touched it at all. The spinner is this. The only thing I did is that I added some margin and some, no, sorry, where is the spinner? Is this. The only thing I did is that I may have tweaked a little bit with the margins, but essentially it's the plain spinner without any change, okay? So where is the difficulty? Well, the difficulty or the slight complication is the following. And we will see this often. So what do we do on the web if we know that the user has to choose between many choices? Or how do we do it on the web if we wanted to give you a list of 10 items? Okay, we do something like this. In the code that produces the HTML view in a web server, we write a loop that in some way says, for each choice, output this piece of HTML produced from the choice, and then go to the next one. So we write the code in a very procedural fashion, right? Essentially, there is some place in a web server that generates the HTML, and then we put a loop that generates all the HTML we want to obtain. If we want to do it in new frameworks and JavaScript frameworks, we do, in the end, it doesn't look too different. We want to describe, what comes out, and we give some way to make it come out. In Java, it looks a little bit different, because Java is a more principled language, which means a little bit more complicated in this respect, but not terribly so. So think of the problem in abstract. Here, you have a list of stuff, a list of strings, in fact. These are the list of account names as given as emails that you want to display, right? Here, you have a view that is called spinner. But inside of the spinner, let me draw on the border list, okay? Inside of the spinner, when you catch it, you will have something like this that pops out, okay? You will have, if the person has 4 accounts, so here there may be Luca, CSC, EU, and here there can be another one, and here there are 4 of those. Each one of these things is a view. Remember, everything in Android that you put on the screen belongs to some view somewhere in the PRS. Okay, so the spinner is a view, and when you click on it, it needs to essentially inflate, so create dynamically these choices, okay, so that it can show you what it wants, what the user wants. Okay, the spinner, you have on one hand, you have a list, what is it called? A list array, an array list. You have here an array list of string, okay? And this array list of string contains, look at UCSC.edu, etc. So this array list of string has 4 strings, and you need to go from this to that. Okay? So you essentially need to write a piece of code that does the following. It takes an array of lists, an array of strings, and it converts it into an array of views, because the views is what you can place on the screen once you click on the spinner. Okay? So what is this thing here? This thing here is called an array adapter, and they will be useful in many occasions in Android. Okay? So the general idea is this. That whereas in web languages you essentially explicitly loop and muck around with assembling the HTML, which is super easy, super simple, but is not typed as an operation, I guess, because HTML is just pieces of string that you stick together. In Java, everything is typed, so you have an array of strings. You want an array of views. How do you go from one to the other? You need to have an array adapter that explains how each item of these will correspond to each item of that. Okay, and it will have, the array adapter will have to come with a proper type. So how do I build this? Okay, so let's look at the code. And this type of code we will see it often. Okay, so the code works in this way. Account list is my array of string, the thing on the left that I need to convert. And now I need to build an array adapter that converts from string, and I create it on the fly. And in this case, it's very simple how to create it, because I say that I want a new array adapter string, and array adapter is this array adapter here is an Android class. So fortunately, Android gives me a class already if I want to do the very simple case of converting one of these into one of those. Okay? If this is a single view, that can take a string, then there is this very simple array adapter. I will show you later the case in which you need to provide your own array adapter. Here we can just instantiate the class in which we say this. Then this is a view, right? So where does this view come from? I define it in XML, but it cannot be in the main layout file. It needs to be in some other layout file, because this is not in the main layout, right? In the main layout there is a spinner, but this is essentially this XML that says, hey, once I have a string, how do I make a view out of the string? The view is the visual element, right? So I say, okay, I'm using this layout file called rlayout spinner layout. That's what will create the visual element on which I can touch. Okay, and this is the array that I want to adapt to use for that adapter. Okay, so that's what I need to do. Okay, so let me look a moment. You see in the layout I have the activity main.xml. That's the layout for the whole activity. And then I have a layout file that I call spinner layout for each individual entry. Now, the truth is that Android would have given me a default layout to use with a spinner. Okay, so there is a default one. I didn't use it because it's far too cluttered. It doesn't give me enough space vertically for my finger to be able to reliably click on one of the entries. And you know, almost everybody, in fact, customizes the basic layout. So I might as well teach you how to customize it as well, because you know, most nobody uses a standard one, I guess, or at least in my experience. So what is this spinner layout? The spinner layout is very simple. Okay, it's just the preview is completely useless, but it's essentially a text view. You know, I have a string. So I need to adapt it to a text view. I mean, I could have a more complicated keras if I want, but here I'm just adapting to a text view, okay? And the only thing I do, you see is that I specify the text size and the padding. That is why I don't want to use a standard layout, okay? So this is essentially something strange. So it's not like you have used that in the XML file, there is the whole instructions to lay out the whole screen. No, this instead gives you only the instructions to display a single string. Okay, so this is how the adapter works. It takes the list that you need to translate, okay, account list. It takes the XML layout in which to put the string, okay, and it gives you this array adapter that I call my adapter. Okay. Then I take the spinner and I set this adapter. This means now the spinner will know what to do. Because when you click it, once you set the adapter to the spinner, when you click the spinner, it will, you know, blow up this list and it will enable you to choose one of the elements. Okay, so that's how it works. Yeah.
What if you need to populate a list or a list of items with more than one from more than one array? For example, if you wanted to,
You
can.
I mean, if you have more than an array, then you create another array that is the union of the two, and then you save it. But you know, this spinner needs to have some order in which to show you the choice.
Yes, but what if, for example, you wanted under each email address, you wanted to show another piece of data that was
yes. This I will explain to you, but in the next example, not in this one. Okay, this one I want to see the easy step. Then I will do a more complicated step in which I will teach you how to do whatever you want with these adapters and adapt to much more complicated pieces of information. You know, even if you wanted, you can have like pick your friends for the party. And so you can have like a photo of them that you might get from some API or from your, you know, your application. You may get their email address. You may see when you may write below when you last send them or received a message from them. You know, you can create really, you know, information. How to call them? Information cards, no, for each choice. And you can do you're very free to do what you want. But in the next example, I do that, not in this one. Okay. So once I do this is all I will do with the spinner. Okay, this is initialized as the spinner. Okay, let's not bother about this code a moment. What happens when you touch the spinner? So many of these array adapters have a slight nuisance, in my opinion. I mean, it's not really a nuisance, but they work in this way. When you make your choice, it's easier in code to know the integer ordinal of the choice you touched. It's easier to know that than to go fish out the string. Because at that point, when the user touches the element of the screen is not there, you know, beautiful for you to just get it. What is on the screen is this layout, is these views that you have generated via inflator. So you would have to do a very complicated piece of code. I mean, it's not complicated. It's maybe 4 lines of code. Okay, I wrote it before and then I deleted it because I thought it was too, more complicated than needed. But your code will need to do this. Hey, please give me the view that was selected. Oh, is it a text view? Then yes, thank you very much. Now give me the text in that text view then, please, And then you have to worry, what if I don't get the text view but I get something else? Well, it should be possible. Okay, fine, but then what do I do still? Nothing, okay, fine. And there is always this sort of mental complexity. Instead of getting the ordinal number of the element you click is easier. And so that's why in my code, if you look at the details of the code, when I get the accounts, here, this account list is actually a class variable. No, sorry, an object variable. Okay, I could add a private here if I bothered. No? But essentially, this is not a local variable to that method. So once I get the account list, I will have it available throughout the lifespan of this application. Okay, and so what I do when you click on it is this. Where is the code? Sorry, I need to fish out the code of where you actually click. Oh boy. Help. Okay, so yes, I'm waiting for my code. One moment. Where is it that I get? Oh, sorry. My silliness. I don't get it. Actually, you change the spinner, okay? And when you tap the check-in button of the application, that's where I read what the selected state of the spinner is. I was confused, okay? So let me say, it's in this processing of the button that I read the spinner, okay? And what I do is this. Very sorry, I got confused by my own code. But essentially is this. I want to get the account. So this is a piece of code that gets the account. And so I get hold of the spinner. Now, here, let me do a brief pause. Because many of you may be thinking, Luca is a little bit, because what does he do? Every time that I need as a visual element, like a view, I do this. Like spinner SP is equal to spinner find view by ID RID.spinner. And you may say, hey, this is just dumb. It's at least the second time that you do it. Okay? So why do you do it each time? Why don't in an on-resume method you do it once and for all? Okay, or maybe even better in on create after I set the layout. Okay, so why don't I do that? There are 2 answers. One is out of habit. Okay, but the other answer is this. You probably could do it after on resume, but I've been burned sometimes. The problem is this. I think there is a sort of golden rule in Android if you want to be safe, which is one of the reasons I don't think the emulator is enough, by the way, to test your code. This is one of the reasons I have this belief. So essentially, there is one rule in Android. If you create the object, you will get to choose when you destroy it. If you don't create the object, then it's Android who decides when it will be destroyed. Okay? So this is a very general rule. An activity, you don't create an activity. Android creates the activity object. This means that the activity can be suspended and destroyed outside of your will. Okay? And now, fine, but more to the point here, we don't create views. We just set the layout file. Okay? In the onCreate method, we set the layout file, but we don't really create the views. So the truth is that the views can disappear from under us at will. We don't know if they're still there when we are running. Okay? Now, most of the time they don't disappear. But when is it that they can disappear? And in fact, I think will disappear. So assume that I do the following. So it is a bit complex. Maybe I should have a drawing that explains it. but I don't know how to draw. I didn't draw on the board, I guess. But so you switch on your app that is called by beautiful app, okay? And my app, make it prefer, okay? So there is my app, and it has an activity, okay? So let's call it activity main, okay? And when you switch on this activity, you start to you create a layout file, and there is this view that I don't know what it is. Okay, assume it's a text view. There is a text view, but this text view is not a class; it's an object. Okay, so I call it v1. Now this is the actual object that is created by Android somehow from you in order to display that. Okay, this is created and is given to you the first time you use your app. Okay, fine. Now, this actually is better to draw it this way. This is activity main, and this is the phone screen. So you have to think of it this way. This is the eye of the user. Okay. So there is a user who looks at the screen and is looking at this. Okay. After a while, as time goes by, the user decides to check their email, and so there is Gmail, which is the top activity, and we will cover it later in detail. I want to cover it in some later class, but you already know that the user can switch between screens. So the user has switched to Gmail, and now your activity main is still here, okay, with v1 in it. Okay, so it's still here. You have executed to go from here to here, on pause and then on stop. But you haven't executed on destroy yet. Your activity is still there. Okay, it may get executed on destroy, but this is the choice of the operating system. You know, it's quite often the case. I mean, if I open my phone and I go to the list of my applications, I have a whole bunch here. These are all applications that have not been destroyed. Okay, and that they're lurking in the background somewhere. But however, Android wants to relay that versus usage. So when the thing is lurking in the background there, what Android does is it says, look, you know, all this layout invasion with these views. This has been in the background for 5 minutes or 1 hour or 2 days. Let's scavenge collect all this. And so your view v1, so these are things. The activity is still there, but your view is not there anymore now. Things really disappear from under your feet. If one day or so, when you stop looking at your Gmail, Facebook, etc., and you remember again, oh, I had this that I wrote, you know, you bring it up to the foreground. What happens? When it happens, that activity M is called to the foreground, right? Now it's this that is on in the foreground. And then Android thinks, oh, goodness, the layout has been reclaimed. I need to replace it again, because anyway, it knows which layout it is, right? And so you will reclaim it from you, and it works really well. And so you have a text view, and you have a, you know, this is inflated again, but it will be another object. I mean, it's not that it will be, that it's not the name that changes, but let me say, you know, this is, you know, the allocation 0v1f in the memory, right? And this is an object that lies in one place. Then the object is garbage collected, and now this text view will be instantiated again in an object that is somewhere else. 1b f2 or whatever it happens to be, no? Is another object. Okay? Now, what happens to the pointer of text to text view that is so kindly stored when you create in the onCreate method? Okay? What happens to that? What happens to that is that Android is at least polite enough to set it to done. Okay? So it does not let you dangle with this reference. But essentially, when you have a text view, Android somehow, I don't know how it does it, but essentially it goes to the reference and sets it to none. So here, when you say, oh, but I cached by text view, I don't need to do this stupid, you know, find view by ID every single time I want to have my view. I can just use the view that I started the first time. Boom, you get a null pointer exception. This is one of the prime causes. I mean, you see how many apps bombard you when you open them after a review. It's one of the, once an app is stable, this is the most common way for an app to crash. And it's because an Android does not promise that things that you have will always be with you. It puts stuff from under your feet all the time to try to manage resources. It's very different than a normal programming language. It's absolutely maddening, by the way, because even though you think you know, there is always that can disappear from under. I mean, we have used that in the company where I lead it, and I wrote the first version, so I still get to look at what happens in the bags, etc. And this story of stuff disappearing from under the feet is the #1 cause of bugs by far. Because you think you have control of everything, and you check all the null pointers, and you get all the resources fresh, and etc. etc. But there is always some case in which you were in the middle of something, the phone goes to sleep for a couple of days, you open it again, and kaboom, you lack your whatever. Okay? So there is a general rule that if you want to be safe, something, get it fresh. Okay? That's sort of the better rule. Only cache things that you create. Never cache things that are created by the OS. Okay? Sorry for the long parenthesis, but it's I mean, I don't think it's something that you easily find in a book that everything is pulled out from under your feet. You discover it the bad way, unfortunately. So now let me go back to this long speech, and then wrap it up, and then show you how you get the data out of the spinner. So the spinner works in this fashion. Okay, you have selected an entry. And the spinner is happy to select that entry. Now it's on look at ucc.eu, it's happy there. And when I click the check-in button, I want to know what is a selected item in the spinner. And the code is not so hard. I grab the spinner again. And then I say that my account, don't worry about what p.account is, but my account is account list, which is my array list of accounts that I grabbed, get spinner.get selected item position. This returns the integer that corresponds to the selected position, and so it's completely easy. You see why it's easier to remember the accounts, and then from the spinner just get an integer. The code is very clean. You don't need to worry about a lot of exceptions. Okay. So I think this concludes the spinner portion of the class. And then, I want to make a poll whether we want to listen about more views or whether we want to go to internet calls. I want to do both things, but we can choose in which order to make them. Okay, so let's make a small break now.
I already did check in with business.
Yeah, I will mention it. Okay, great. So it's working.
So just, you can do it multiple times.
Yeah, you just see my I think the problem is that you are not on the location. Yes, but you see.
Oh, I didn't know.
Oh, right.
Oh,
Yeah, I can't use that. I'm walking outside. Yeah, and then also. Yeah. They were like.
internet's up.
When I had. Oh, it makes. No, just. It looks like
I turn on my GPS. My internet.
It's like, yeah. Yeah. You just check it, make it. The button will still be the same size, but the actual button will be. Right? So you padding of 2 pixels. Is what you're asking? Like so, these won't be touching. There will be 2 pixels on this side and 2 pixels on that side. Oh, okay. I have this 10. Yeah, I think so. Or like using. Yeah.
Is that a specialized
Oh yeah.
Like doesn't realize. Yeah. Now I just
Yeah. That's
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it works. I know, like, it's kind of fun. Or like, yeah. Okay.
The idea is that so basically the file.
I know.
But the point is that I mean, I was doing that experiment, but the workflow I wanted is that you wait that, then you just you check the event, and then you start looking obviously the event.
Okay,
I cannot check in.
Yeah, exactly. So that problem.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's like
Yeah.
But I do have this.
yeah, so it's fine.
Have my GPS on.
Go
I feel
outside.
like it's really?
Go outside. It worked for me. I don't know why. Go outside. Do it. This doesn't even have a data point. It worked. Go outside.
Let me try.
All right. So it's going to be. So I just like pepper one on line pepper. Oh, I see.
You get it all done? Oh, I like did something. Oh, it's not like
That works.
it's out of my hands.
Going outside work.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know why.
yeah.
I need to start again the classes. Okay.
So that means this means I'm just like checked in now, yes? Yeah. Okay.
So okay. So let me start. Yes, please. So there's simply, the people that cannot all get the location with the app. So one solution, if you want to check in, is to use iClickers and take the union of the police. So you either use the iClicker or you check in with your phone outside. I think there is some reason I don't understand that we need to be some phones. So how does the location work? You can either take it from the GPS or you can get it from the name of the Wi-Fi. For the name of the Wi-Fi, it's not entirely clear to me why the Wi-Fi names alone are not enough. It should be enough, but yeah, actually, I really don't know. Does anybody know? I don't know whether it depends on the fact that the Google thinks, this person does not have a phone plan, so we'll not do the courtesy to them to tell them the location out of some pact that I have with the telecommunication companies. I don't know. It's not in. I don't know. If somebody researches it, maybe it's a good idea. But in this moment, I don't know. So please click on this question now as a means to take attendance, at least in one of the pieces of the class, if you have the clicker. So I can do two things next. I can talk more about this view. This view is a similar to Spinner, but different. You all have in a real phone the list of people, right? If you go to the people app, you have this list of people, where you see their photos, if they have any photos, and then you see their name, phone numbers, etc. So that's like a list view, but with a very rich format. So essentially, we will not be expanding anymore into a single string, but we can do things with more freedom. It doesn't look like a spinner. You get many items, one below the other, and you can scroll up and down. These items can be filled with text or with photos or with whatever you want, with posts from your Facebook feed, Twitter feed. These list views are very, very general in application. Okay, and so I want to teach you essentially how to configure your list view and inflate it with any content you want. This, it will take us some time, not an incredible amount of time, but we can do it now. Or else, I can tell you how to use the network. Both of these are, arguments that will take probably 1 hour each. But I can start with the one that you prefer. So if you please vote on what you want to do next, I have no preference. I have both, samples of code available. It depends on what you want to play first in your projects or in your imagination when you play with your apps. Do you want to be able to talk to the network and to other things? Or do you want to be able to display things in a more refined way? This is basically the issue. So I leave it on for a little while longer, the poll, but at 3 minutes and 40 seconds, I will close it. 40 seconds. Anybody needs to click yet? Everybody has. Yeah, okay. You need to click. Yeah.
Yes, you have to do the grading for assignment 1 from Friday to Tuesday. And so I will assign Tuesday the next assignment. So that, because in the end grading is well work and it's part of your grade, I didn't want to overlap an assignment with grading. Okay, that's the main thing. I mean, I may give it out to her sooner, but I will make sure that you have time non-overlapping in order to do it. Okay. Okay. Let me read the results of this poll. Okay, great. Okay. Let's fight it out. I didn't know this was real time. Close my eyes and does anybody have a coin? Okay, no. Okay. Great. I mean. By the way, this is something that I teach in my graduate class on crowdsourcing, but there is also a fact that in general you cannot make a voting system in which introducing irrelevant choices does not alter the voting. Okay, so there are. I mean, I should do it in another moment, but you can have some reasonable assumptions about how. Imagine that everybody gives you a ranking among the alternatives, like candidates in a political election. Okay, imagine that one of these candidates is actually dead, so he will not be able to occupy office. This happened actually, sadly. There was a congressman that died the day before the election. Grossman, somebody from the south. I forgot who. Okay, but he died the day before, and so they couldn't take him out of the ballots. So that's the prototypical example of an irrelevant choice, because if people vote for him, they know actually that he can't be elected. But so supposedly that you want to make a voting scheme that has these problems. Let's see if I can remember them. Independence from irrelevant assumptions. So if I want to know whether A is better than B, that C is or is not among the choices should in theory not matter. Okay. The other thing. So what are the? Oh boy! Now I forgot. But this is one of the relations. The other one is this is one of the clauses. The other one is that it has to produce a transitive relation as output, and the other thing is that it has to satisfy a majority. If the majority of people prefer, it has to satisfy unanimity. If everybody prefers A to every other choice, A has to be the top choice. And the only system that satisfies these is dictatorship. You essentially pick a person, and what that person says is the truth. So if you want, essentially the actual is that if you want to merge many opinions, there is no way of making it independent from irrelevant choices. Okay. I can I could give you some proofs, and it would be very interesting. But actually, I do it in my graduate class, which where people are welcome to crash in when they like. So in this case, actually, my putting the choice E, even though I won't cancel the rest of the class, it is you cannot make an amalgamation of your opinions done in such a way that my putting E there or not is irrelevant. Okay. There are a lot of incredibly nice facts about these kind of things. Anyway, let me stop the poll. Because I put in some, well, okay, what do I want to do? I think it comes down to me. TA, what do you prefer to have? A lot of students worrying about views or internet access? Views. Okay, so the one drawback about views is that I have my old code written for Eclipse, but I can describe it to you nevertheless, and then I can give you a working example, okay? It does not matter much. So, actually, I can probably do these, sorry. I'm getting confused with these. Okay, I'll build a new application. Okay. By the way, while we build it, so no, let's wait a second. Okay, it should come up. I put on Piazza a link to an external module that you can install in order to make it easier to add graphics to your application. Okay, that module is very recommended because now let me show you how it works. Suppose I wanted to add a new icon for my where is things? So in MipMap is where you have the IC launcher. Okay, so suppose you want to have a new icon for your app. How do you do it? Just as an exercise while we get this ready. You do it in this way. If you click here, if you install these, you have new and you have these. Okay, Android icons drawable, material icons import, scaled drawable, multi-source drawable. I will import a new scaled drawable. Okay, this means when you have a drawable in your application, you often want to have it in multiple resolutions because there are many screen sizes in Android. So normally you would have to place one drawable in each one of various folders. Okay. And instead, I will this application essentially builds for you the 4 or 5 resolutions that are needed. So I can add a drawable. I go into my pictures folder, and I get some. You know, these are check marks, but I also know that I have some. How do I call them? Fiat slug. Okay, these are some slugs, like this one. It's not very beautiful though. Okay, this is a higher res version, okay? It's still a bit smallish, but I can choose this slug, okay? And now I can choose how many resolutions I want to make out of them. And I can say that the export name is Fiat slug. I think I could have changed it before, but I forgot. If I say okay, now I get 4 all the different resolutions of my slug that I can use in my project, okay? And if I want to import in MipMap, then I can do it similarly. I just forgot exactly how, but okay. I can show you later, but essentially this application is what you needed to import images here. I just wanted to show it because it's so convenient, otherwise it wastes a lot of time.
Good question. On the product that we built, can we add icon as a button over the button?
Yes, we can. And if you want to add an icon on a button, there are very many ways, but one is to set the background of the button to be the icon resource. Okay, so you say something like Android column background is equal to r dot drawable dot the resource ID of that. Okay, so okay, now that the application has built, let me go and try to have a list view. Okay, so this is my layout file, and it's kind of empty. Okay, it's a relative layout, and what I want to do is go in Eclipse and show you what I have done there in the layout. okay, and use it. So in the layout in Eclipse, sorry, you see it's a very different organization of folders. But this is my layout. Oh boy, it's still loading. Okay, fine. While it's loading, I just grab it and I copy it to the other place, okay? So this is what I want to have. So I go there and I put it. Okay? So let's use this simply. What does this create? Oh boy. Okay, so maybe let me change plan midway, okay? Let me come back to the other app, because I thought I could simply copy the code from Eclipse, but I'm running into these problems. That is... Hold on, maybe I can just fix it by doing this, though. 1 second. It seems to be stuck. Sorry?
You have to import it from, I guess.
Yeah, but I don't need to import it. That's the point. So let me do one thing. This is what I... So I think, you know, that if I just have these... if I had just have these on top, it may be fine. If this works, we are set. Otherwise, you know, let me... No, we still have these rendering problems. So, okay, let me go to the part on internet that instead I checked that it works. Yeah, sorry. It can be anything, but I don't want to try to debug too many things while I teach. It's too hard. Okay, so I want to go back and actually tell you how to do internet access. Sorry for the diversion, but either it works or it doesn't. So I'll do the list view the next time. So for the internet access, there are a couple of issues to solve. Okay, one is this, that Java unfortunately is very verbose when you need to get a URL, because in Python you just say something like http dot get fetch URL or something like that, or but you essentially give the URL, and what you get out of it is a stream, maybe with some maybe it's an object actually that has an error code and a stream. And so it's very easy to check that the error, that the return result is a 200, so that the resource was found, and then you will actually get what you want. You typically do it in 4 or 5 lines. In Java, it's very difficult to do it. Okay, and not difficult, but it requires a lot of code. And furthermore, there are 2 libraries in Android that deal with internet access. One is the new recommended one, which I'm not using. And one is the old one that comes from Apache. Okay, here I'm using so the one that comes from Apache is essentially officially deprecated, but in practice everybody is using it. One of the reasons why it's better is that you can do more things with it. For instance, one of the things you can do is that you can set your own timeouts easily for the HTTP calls. Here you are on a mobile device. Yeah, the standard HTTP call times out in, I don't know, 60 seconds or something like that. There is a standard in the protocol. Here you can decide to time out faster. This is one of the reasons. You can do other tricks to it. Essentially, it's a more flexible library, in my opinion. Okay, and so I standardized myself on using this library. So this is what we will be using, and the library is actually not cited here. But if you go in the Java code, okay, this server call is what does the actual call. Okay, so if you look at the library, you can see that I use org apache http entity response and all the various other pieces. Okay, so this in the end is a sort of a nuisance that you need a lot of code to do an HTTP call because you need to set it up in a lot of detail. Okay, but once you have done it once, I'm giving you the full code I use. So for you, you know, it will be a cut and paste business. In fact, you can use my same class. You will be okay. Okay. Now, what are the other nuisances? The other nuisance, essentially, of doing an HTTP call is that you cannot simply do like you do in Python. Please fetch this URL and use the results. Because if you do it from the UI thread, then you block the phone for all the time in which the HTTP call is going on. In early versions of Android, you could actually do that, and it was very common to get applications that would tell you the application is unresponsive, do you want to stop it, right? Because somebody on the UI thread was using a lot of time. In new versions of Android, if you try to do internet access on the UI thread, you will get an error, and it will crash, okay? So at least the developer will know, because the problem is that if you're a developer, you may not notice that you're doing things that take a lot of time, because when you develop, you're in an office with Wi-Fi and everything is set up properly, and your HTTP calls may complete in 1/10 of a second, and you never notice that they really could delay you, right? So the new versions are just bother. So we have to do what I informally call the subtiming model of calls, which works in this way. Okay. There is some sea level, and above the sea level there is the UI threads. There is the UI thread, and below the sea level is when we do work in the background, is some background thread. Okay, so essentially the way it works is this: call, and we call something that is called async task, which will be our submarine. Okay, so this is our submarine. I don't know how to draw a submarine, but there is a propeller here. Okay. So we did this async task that will go underwater, and we do the call. Now, if you do a call, eventually you want, when the call comes back, to do something to tell the user, you know, usually. I mean, sometimes you don't need, but usually you need to do not only telling the user, but suppose you want to modify some data in the activity. If you modify the data in the activity here, then you have to be very careful, because this thread is running in parallel with what's running in the UI thread. Right? You can have concurrency issues. A safer thing would be this submarine can send up buoys that contain packages. Okay? So when these come out floating, you can use these results in the UI thread in order to update what is on the screen, change the data structures without worrying about concurrency, and do everything you want, provided it doesn't take a lot of time. Okay, so the model is this: we launch a submarine, and the submarine will launch back results to us. And so in Java, there is all this thing about getting the submarine ready. These packages here will be these voice here are in a certain package, in a certain objects of a certain class. So we need to have a submarine class. Essentially, we need to have a buoy class, and we need to have all this organization around doing the call. Okay, so that's the other source of complications, sort of. So we have to set up all these things here. I'm giving you most of the code, however. So yeah, the other difficulty is not a difficulty, but the other feature is that I'm giving you very general code in such a way that you can then adapt it to your own projects or homeworks in a very easy way. But because my code is flexible, it's slightly, not very much, but it's a little bit more complicated than the minimum possible needed. Okay. So let's look at how this works. This is what does a server call. This class in server call, okay, is what actually calls the server. And it works this way. It's an instance of a sync task. A sync task is like a submarine of all trades. Whenever you need to do something in the background easily, you launch one such async task submarine. Okay. Now, this async task has a little problem, has a benefit and a problem. The benefit is that async task makes it very easy to go underwater and launch the buoys to come back. So it has been a facilitator that being able to do this in a nice way. Okay. So the drawback that I discovered the hard way is that maybe now the situation is better, but various versions of Android have a thread pool that they use for async tasks. Okay, and some phones have the bright idea of having a thread pool of size 1. Okay, so in some cases I was trying to, I wrote at some point an app that did this. I launched a submarine that would stay underwater forever for the whole duration of the app. That essentially was, sleeping, then looking for updates, then sleeping again, then doing the other stuff. And he was doing launching a buoy every now and then, and otherwise happily navigating in the background. Okay, and then I wanted to launch other submarines to do it instead calls one by one. So I wanted to model one submarine at the same time because one of the submarines was never emerging. Okay. At the end, when you're done with submarine and the call comes back, the submarine can just emerge and self-destroy. Well, there's nobody in it. No, but jokes aside, right? And so I discovered that some phones have a thread pool of 1 for the submarines. So in those phones, the submarine would go underwater forever, the one in the background. And then, I would launch these HTTP calls using this task, and nothing would ever happen. You would neither get an error, nothing would ever happen. And only on some phones. On the other phones, it was working perfect. The beauties of coding, right? So the story is this. Async tasks are good for things that take time, but you don't have a huge amount of control of when things get done. They get done relatively quickly, especially if you have only one of them pending at any time. If you want to do things that is truly multi-threaded, for example, at some point, I wrote essentially a network scanner, because scanning in parallel the IP addresses on your home network to help find webcams you wanted to configure. That was a particular application. But essentially, I wanted to have 4 threads that were active at the same time and with a certain speed, to do whatever I wanted. If you want to do things like that, then you have to take control, and we will do it later in the class. You have to create your own thread objects. Okay, so async task is very easy, but you don't need a lot of control, and you just want to do simplicity. Okay, you don't need to deal with the threads yourself. The async task will take care of building the threads, and it has 3 methods. Okay, so when you extend it, you need to give it 3 portions. One is doing background. Doing background tells it what to do while it's underwater. And then it can send up two types of buoys. Okay? Oh boy, here I use only one type of buoy. But so I tell you that there is also another one. One is called on post execute. This means when the submarine is done, it sends up this final buoy that carries the final result. You have another type of buoy that you can send up, okay, and that is called, I don't use it here, but it would be, let's see if it tells me in the documentation. Async task, oh, sorry. On progress update is the other type of buoy, and on progress update is a buoy that you can use. For example, suppose that you're using this async task in order to resize 100 images, no? And you want a progress bar that tells you where you are at. Then you can send up periodically on progress updates, and whenever you send it up, you can use those progress updates in order to update the point in the progress bar where we are at. Okay, so there's 2 ways to send up signals, and so when you use one of these server calls, you give it a server call specification. You need to say essentially what is the specification, what is and what it needs to do with and what is the type of voice that gets sent up. So this is a specification. This I am basically not using. I think I wrote string just to get because I didn't know what to do and I didn't care. Post-process pair is the boy that I send up at the end. Okay, so essentially the server call specification is will contain, you know, please do this URL call with these parameters, and this will be the type of the return pair that is returned at the end of the execution. Okay, so the server call specification is a class I invented, and this is what I'm passing. Okay, so I'm passing the URL, the context. Okay, the context is essentially a pointer to the activity where this was initiated, and is useful. Why this is useful, I will tell you later. But it's often useful to carry the context with you. It will it has a form. Okay, and it has a use result method. Okay, so the problem is this: that when I tell which call I want to do, I have to include in the call what to do with the results. It's like a JavaScript callback. When I start the call, I need to tell it at that moment which function I want to call on the results. Okay, because I want to make it so that you can use this reuse this for any type of code. Well, it's a bit late. Maybe I should just stop here. So get this code for next time so that you can follow us on your laptops. And next time we go on from here.
No, I literally sent it back. Yeah. That's all. Oh yeah, I did make No, I found that location and it still says
Um,
So what's the deal with attendance? Like, how are we doing this? Clickers or the app?
I'll be using the union of the two. So some people have problems with the clickers.
Okay.
Some people have problems with the app, but as long as people can do one or the other, they're fine.
Okay. So the past like I've been here for like the 4 classes we have, but I don't think I'm getting a grade on the comments for
Because I need to fetch it from the commons and then.
But even that, like,